involved in harm reduction, although my first career was in substance abuse prevention and HIV/AIDS prevention because my mom ran a nonprofit working in those, and I was voluntold to do a lot of projects. Um, I am currently working for an environmental justice nonprofit, and the scope of my work basically is about doing secure data systems. My previous work was in government and tech and startups, so I have a little bit of a different perspective on our topics today. I'm also know Sharita because we both went through the Emerge program last year together.
Yes, we did. Great. So first things first, and thank you for sharing where you guys are located. Melissa, did you say what area you're
Nope,
located?
I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
There we go.
We
So
we
just
we cover the whole state, but that's where I am.
cool. So this is how it worked, you guys. First, let me introduce the topic for today's podcast. The topic: white women and black women, sisterhood or struggle, breaking the barriers to authentic solidarity. So I'm gonna throw out something first because I know if you're like me, you want to know, okay, was these hand-picked folks who we chose because we're comfortable and we know that these individuals are going to say the things that we want. So if you're like me, those are the kind of questions that I would ask people like, well, how did you choose these folks? Oh, let me tell you how we did it. When I put out the call, I did it on my personal page. And I wanted to do it that way because I know that my net is pretty wide right now. And that we have people that are further away than even Susanna. We have people who were interested in Virginia, New York, right? South Carolina. We had so much interest. It was just the time as a barrier. Um, After we did that, and there were people that followed up, there were questions that were asked. I did not choose the individuals because I'm familiar with a lot of folks who do this work or are connected to me in some kind of way. I am going to have a bias. I may have saw someone's answer and say, I really like that. I just want that person. Or I may saw something and say, no, I don't really like what they said. So what we did is we utilized our team to select based on the answers. So the team did not know who these individuals were, didn't know what they looked like. All they knew was the answers. And what we came up with was there were three individuals who were chosen based on their answers. Now, if you also know me, you know that I don't like BS. I don't like people to just say something because it is going to sound good or because it looks good. Um, so my team understands that as well. So I'm curious. What's crazy, you guys, is when they sent their answers, I didn't even read them. I just screenshot sent. Screenshot. I didn't have time because I was working on other stuff. So it was so cool that I had my team come back like, wait a minute, this answer right here. I was like, okay, whatever you want to do, let's go with it. So their decision was, let's bring all three of these individuals on at the same time. So I'm ready. If you guys are ready, I'm ready. First, why are we talking about this? You guys know what we're going through right now in the state of our government, the world, and just a few months ago when we elected a new leader in our government. And there was a lot of people who look like these women on here and not like me that were like, I'm going to go buy a blue bracelet or make one to show my solidarity. And what happened was you saw a lot of black women and a lot of black people say, I don't want to see that, including myself. We don't want to see that. That's performative. And what I saw happen in my inbox where there were white women reaching out in a very unique way. They weren't trying to give me a blue bracelet or show their picture with one. They weren't trying to convince me that they had my side. Actually, they got a little about it in my DM, and I was like, hold up now, you guys ready to go out. Like, no, Sharita, we need to. And I was like, hold up, slow down. I'm going to take some rest because I'm tired. And they understood that. And I said, wow, we got this platform where me and Henry are talking about how to build authentic relationships. And I actually experience them on a regular with different people who do not look like me. And I wanted people to see how I do that. And what it involves is tough conversations around real topics and real people. So, this first question, and we're going to do popcorn. So, what I'm going to ask my guests to do is I'm going to ask them to take turns kind of unpacking. I may interrupt or jump in and say, hey, tell me a little bit more about that or what you said. But these questions as well are not new to my guests. Um, I don't like to play games with people and say, I'm going to give you something, then I hit you from the side later. That's not fair. I don't like people doing that to me, so I don't do it to them. So my guests have received these questions and they had some thought. And obviously they answered them authentically because they wouldn't be on here. So this first one, what's a hard truth about the relationship between Black women and white women that you've had to confront in your own life? And I'm going to allow them to speak first before I share. Whoever wants to go first.
Go first. So, in thinking about this question, and I actually had a couple more things come up since that I originally answered, but I think one of the hardest things for me was when this new administration took over, and I felt a lot of fear personally that I had never felt before as a white
Mm,
woman. And I
mm,
realized that that must be what Black women feel every
mm,
day of their whole entire life. And I felt an immense sense of like dread and worry and like, I gotta do something about this because, and then I felt really bad about that because like I knew that it sucked before, but I had never actually experienced it and
mm,
felt it in my own life. And so, you know, toggled back and forth in my relationship with Black women between like, I'm here for you and I will do anything for you. And I feel guilty that I haven't done it.
mm,
And that's just something that I constantly struggle with because I can only do what I can do. And I don't want to ask you what I can do because that's not your place. But I also don't know what I don't know. And
mm,
so I sometimes feel like I'm here, but I'm not really doing enough. And I feel bad about that.
mm. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa.
I could go next. And I'm not a person to hold back on anything, so I hope to not offend, only enlighten, right? But I feel that, and especially looking at it through a political lens, because that's so much of what I do. Because as you know, Sharita and I met through Emerge, which is a program that trains Democratic women to run for office. So looking at it through a political lens, it's very extractive. White women often rely on Black women, in particular, to
Mm,
show up and do the work when it
mm,
comes to getting out the vote, when it comes to canvassing, when it comes to like not so much donations because we rely on the billionaires for that, and that's said with heavy sarcasm. But we often rely on the women to do the vote, to do the Black women to do the work. I mean, we see this in Georgia, we see this in southern states, we see this right now with uplifting the messages of Jasmine Crockett and being like, where's she been the whole time? Or like, thank God for AOC, being a brown woman, So and we're frequently doing that, and we see that with what happened with Kamala too, where a lot of white women were like, yes, we know the Black women are going to show up to vote, so we're just going to stay home. Or we know the Black women are going to vote for Kamala, but we're really really concerned about the price of eggs for our little children. um and we're constantly doing things that not only serve to harm ourselves, not just as white women, but as like people, right?
mhm,
But in that, we're depending and extracting the labor from Black women to save ourselves. And then we get mad at them, or then we're very hypocritical and be like, yes, we'll wear a blue bracelet to show that we're in support of you, even though we voted on Trump because gas.
Mm.
So, I see that a lot, and through my workings with a lot of people, especially with like the rural caucus here in Kentucky, we don't see a lot of those outside voices of just anybody who's not straight, white, cis, right? It's very rare that we see queer representation or people of color representation or trans representation or gender expansive representation. And it's really important, I believe, for us as white women to own our behaviors and own
Mm.
our harms. And I say that as somebody who grew up with a family that will with a father that was very racist, very big MAGA, and I'm still having to unpack and unlearn those systems of white supremacy that are intrinsically built into who I am, not only as a daughter of the American Revolution, a colonizer, right? But also as someone who was raised in not a very healthy manner.
Mm. Wow. Whew.
Yeah. Wow, tough to follow. A lot of what you said resonated, and I think for me, to give some more specific examples of how I see the disproportionate amount of labor being put off on Black women and women of color in is in the workplace. In public health and harm reduction is more of my specific kind of niche. Systemically, we want you to show up and be the de-escalators, but then we'll turn around and weaponize that against you because you're loud or you're angry and you scare other people. Growing up in a dysfunctional home, generational drug and substance use, and all of the cornucopia of abuse, but in a fairly affluent suburb of Columbus, one of the I think we were one of the first kind of divorced families, and my only friends were, the Black kids were allowed to play with me. The Black kids were
Mm.
allowed to let me have me over to their house. So I grew up at an early age, like recognizing that there were a lot of problems with white people. like
Mm.
I've experienced a whole lot of harms, a lot of supposed to be caring, nurturing people in positions of power that were white harmed me. And unlearning that and trying to find my place and not center my voice and my experience as a spectrumy, you know, queer person. I'm privileged in a lot of ways, but I also, I left Ohio as soon as I could. Was gone for 17 years, and I'm back. But this isn't the only place I've lived. But I've never felt less safe than in a building or establishment filled with white people.
Wow. Well, now you can see why my circles look the way that they do, you guys. They didn't come in here to play no games. Um, as I was listening and I was writing and taking notes, Melissa, you shared about the uncomfortable feelings. I would love for you to give a couple example of those uncomfortable feelings you expressed that come up.
Yeah, so I just thought about like if especially with the SAVE Act and possibly making it harder for women that have gotten married to register to like things that I have taken for granted as a white woman that could be taken away from me, and realizing that this attack on my freedoms and my liberties is something that Black women and Black people and brown people and anyone that doesn't look like this have been experiencing their
Mm.
whole, like, since they were born. And the magnitude of that, like, it just feels like I'm I'm filled with anxiety most days, and
Mm.
that is really unhealthy for
Mhm.
people to live that way. And so it just really solidified for me that there are people in this country that feel like this every day and have felt like this their entire life. And that is not okay with me. I am not okay with people feeling like
Hmm.
that. And
Yeah.
although I knew that mentally before, feeling it in my body really solidified for me. And I think that that is what is missing for white men. There are not very many opportunities for them to feel like they don't have something.
Mm,
And so they don't really know what it feels like. And
mm,
so I've been like racking my brain, like, how do I, and you can't convey that to someone with words, but just that feeling of like dread of like things could get taken away from me that I have had my whole life. And it could really impact how I move through the world.
mm.
It just blows my mind.
Yeah, and everything you all said is true. I think for me to add to those wonderful perspectives, and I quoted white women rely on black women to do the work, Violet, extracting the labor, right? Susan, we weaponize, and I added how you show up, right? These are heavy because it is true. I think the hard truth about the relationship between black women and white women, and when especially when I'm thinking of my own experience, is the ability to really have these conversations with our own people. So it's like I create this space today, not necessarily for the people that look like me, but for the women that look like you.
Hmm.
Because what I found in friendships and relationships, and I have a relationship now that's, well, it was on the fence, but now I've kicked it over it. I'm done. And I hope that individual actually watches this and gains some insight from you all, because it is difficult to watch people who claim to be in relation with you, who have poor excuses for why they can't sit with people that look like them and have tough conversations, but expect me, like Violet says, to expect me to do the labor and the work with my community,
Mm-hmm.
right? Expect
Mm-hmm.
me to show up. And, I've been tokenized, right? I'm from South Side of Chicago. I'm a black girl from the South Side of Chicago, but in Kentucky, if there's a black issue with harm reduction, it's like Sharita. And I'm like, listen, I'm not even from here. Like, I have to get to know people who look like me that are from here because it's a totally different way of life. So I'm sitting here like, why, friend? Why, friend who say you love me, who say you're in complete relationship with me, have a fear of sitting with your partner that you lay down with every night and talk about accountability and how they show up with this? Why are you afraid to talk to your sister when the expectation is that I talk to my sisters who do not want to talk about substance use and overdose, but you have an excuse? So I think that hard truth is that piece, that inability, and maybe it's not an inability. Maybe you all could check me on this, because I've been saying it's an inability to confront these folks in your circle. Is it an inability? Do you think that these people are? Oh, Susan's like, wait a minute. Go ahead, Susan. I want to. And then Melissa mouth drop like, but go ahead, Susan. What are you thinking? Is it
I
inability?
think I believe that we're all capable. I really do believe, like the molecular level, but we might not have the skills and the language at first, but we learn, we grow, we lean into that discomfort.
Mm,
That's, I think that's where we're lacking. It's that kind of clinging on to the social status and that mirage illusion of power subconsciously ingrained into us as white folks generationally on this stolen land.
I didn't say it, y'all.
Yeah, I agree. Uh, for real, because I think that we are all capable of it, but we are not all willing to
Mm,
go there. Um, we have lived a life that, while it has its traumas, has always been portrayed as better than Black people, you know? Even like I confront myself on this every day because um, I will have these conversations with my husband because he says some fucked up shit that I'm like, did not just come out of your mouth. I
mhm,
did not marry that person. But it's because it's so ingrained in our culture and in
mm,
our system that people don't stop to think, is this a real thought that I had? Or is it something that I've been taught?
mm,
And that's where I have to take a second and go, this is something that someone told me once and I held on to it.
mm.
And I don't agree with it. So I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna move on and I'm gonna do better for myself and for my children.
Yeah,
Wow.
because I believe my mama might have packed my bags as a kid, but it's my choice to continue to carry that baggage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
Listen, I love that. I can't get all y'all quotes. I'm gonna throw this out here because I stay here all day right here. Ryan would be like, "Time to go." Um, I'm gonna throw this at Violet because she could probably tie in what she would have said for that question I threw out there. But this is the second question, and it leads right into it. Considering what I said about are we capable, and I love you all's answers. Violet, how do you actively How do you actively challenge white supremacy in your personal and professional relationships? Now, I'm going to pause real quick. I'm going to tell you something, y'all. Violet, I mean, we were, okay, Henry, you're going to hear me say this, but this is my other vanilla and chocolate, Ebony and Ivory. Man, Violet, we was some troublemakers in our class, but I love that about her. Again, I did not tag her, ask her. She saw my post at 3 in the morning. Yeah, I'm putting the news out there and said I'm gonna wait until I didn't even follow up with her, like even press her, but I was like, hey, if she gets on here, only because we've had conversations over time. I know she's gonna bring some powerful stuff, but I'm very curious. How do you actively challenge white supremacy in your personal and professional relationships?
This is really like a threefold answer becoming as a mother of a white son, right? As someone involved in politics and was an uncommitted delegate standing in solidarity with my Palestinian brothers and sisters at the Democratic National Convention last year, and
Mm-hmm.
also as someone who's involved in local Kentucky politics. And I'm just gonna say that when I messaged Sharita this morning, I looked back on our previous messages and I was reminded of a quote that it was either her, I believe it was Sharita that said, and I can't think if it was you or Attica Scott, but I believe it was you because you're the one I told you. So we're going to go with that. That the gist was to, as a white person, one thing that I can do for people of color and for the marginalized communities is to repeat what they said and basically be a mouthpiece for them. So if
Mm-hmm.
they say something, um, like I don't know. We could take it at the DNC for the example because I sent her a video of a speech I made during a
Mm-hmm.
sit-in that my Palestinian brothers and sisters are saying to me, this injustice that is happening in Palestine is killing our families. It is killing our sons and it is killing our daughters. It is killing our elders. It is killing our communities. And the aggression that the DNC had towards them was real. So what can I do is just voice that opinion and stand in solidarity with them. So in the realm of politics, that's what I try to do. Professionally speaking, as a technologist who works in nonprofit spaces and works in advocacy spaces and in political campaigns and things like that. The way I can do that is by challenging continually both management, leadership, and my peers on the actual intersection of white supremacy and the patriarchy that is intrinsically built into tech. And we see that every day with like Elon Musk, for example, and him
Mhm.
being from apartheid South Africa, and calling people who are on public assistance, parasites. Yeah, I work for a nonprofit. I'm not paid well. I'm not paid anywhere near what I should be being paid if I was in the public sector, or the private sector. But that doesn't matter to me.
Mhm.
My son is on Medicaid, and he's a special needs kid, and he's autistic and is on medications and requires therapies and blah 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 blah. And I wouldn't be able to provide him that solidity in the life without being that. But I fight the machine. I'm not a parasite. And I take that, and I know that he doesn't mean people that look like me and who are educated like me and who could speak like me. He means like people in West Louisville, for example, and I don't want to call them out specifically, but that's who he means. He means the poor, the ones who weren't able to finish their education, the ones who are constantly brought down and are generationally kept in poverty because of the machine that he represents.
Mhm.
So it's up to me to challenge it. And have I been let go from jobs before because of it? Yeah, I have, and I'm proud-ish, I guess. I mean, no one wants to get fired, but my mom is constantly telling me to stop talking so much, but sometimes you just have to.
Mm. Who else want to take a stab at
All
that
right.
question?
Can I pop in there real quick? Okay. So I want to say yes, definitely being that mouthpiece after I've showed up to intentionally listen and learn from Black women and people of color, and always being vigilant to not erase their labor, but also not shine a dangerous spotlight where they're disproportionately going to be targeted. Gaining consent to quote somebody, is important, right? In this time. And I made a note because, in my little niche subsection of people who use drugs, harm reduction, public health, however you want to call it, um a saying that Zico S over there in Virginia, I do have her permission, but it really resonated and I use it a lot and I always cite her. I never want to erase a Black
Right.
woman's labor or a person of
Mhm.
color's labor, but essentially, like, we have WIC because, based off of, the free food from the Panther Party, right? Like, we
Right.
have traditionally, like, taken the idea, the credit, and the money
Mm.
and erased all of that labor. But something that she said was, one of the most dangerous substances she's ever run into in the field is white women's tears. And oh my gosh, it changed my life. Is like, my gosh, do we cry and do we center ourselves and my feelings on this fucking stage with a microphone, erasing your labor and suffering at the drop of a hat?
Mm.
I don't know.
Whew.
That's all. That
You guys, Melissa, was it you one time that you were crying and you said, I'm not doing this? You stopped yourself. You was like, this is not that. I am not about to cry. I couldn't remember who it was that was like, no. That's why
I've
I
been
looked at
crying.
Melissa and was
I
like,
cry a lot,
but I
and
love how Melissa's like, no, this is not
yeah,
happening in this moment. Because no, no,
It's
no.
hard. It's hard to stop. I know. It's taken me like intentional sitting with that over there in a corner that, like, it's a fucking reaction my body does. And I'm autistic as fuck. I almost never cry. Why is this happening? Because the rest of the room is expecting me to.
Yeah,
What?
I will say to that, and this is a joke, by the way, that luckily the antidepressants keep me from crying. So I still laugh. Well, I end up laughing instead, which is awful, if not
awkward. Yeah,
worse.
Yes, I've seen Violet do that. And I've seen Violet share. I've seen Melissa share. Melissa, did you have something to say about this particular question before I comment?
well, I just wanted to say that one of the other things that I really do as well as trying to, amplify those voices and make sure, because there are a lot of places that I can go that black women are not afforded the privilege to go. And there are places where I can take that word with me. But I also just am always cognizant of who's at the table, who's
Mm,
here, and who is not represented in this conversation that needs to be represented.
mm,
Whether it's people who use drugs or black women or, you know, when we talk about these issues, we have to make sure that we're getting feedback from the people that we're talking about. We cannot
mhm.
just make up rules for people that without getting their ideas and concerns. It doesn't make any sense, and it will only serve to hurt all of us. So that was the only other thing.
And it's that's a harm reduction principle for those of you that don't know, right? That's one of our basics for all of us, including myself. I don't get to talk about a situation. I always say, I haven't put a needle in my arm. So I'm not about to have a conversation about the spots and not to. I have people on my team, but it's really centering people with that lived experience.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna say to you guys, because we're getting close to wrapping up, and there's a final question that actually, and they didn't know this part, that I'm going to have my guests ask. Well, I'm going to ask, but I'm also going to have my guests share directly to white women that will watch this today and for however long this lasts on these platforms. But when I think of how do I actively challenge white supremacy, you all see what I do out front. That was loud. I don't know if y'all heard that or not, but you all see what I do out front. But the other part of my this movement in solidarity is this is how I actively challenge white supremacy. I call white people to the table. I practice harm reduction. I'm gonna have a conversation about white women and not have them at the table to talk about it. So challenging white supremacy is saying, I'm gonna get your people because I'm tired of yelling and screaming. And these are folks who say they understand that I'm tired. So they're taking up, this their own cross and saying, I'm going to participate, but this is how I actively do it. And so as we wrap it up, and I knew this conversation was going to be a lot, and we're not done. This is like a part one to this. We will be coming back because as I jot down things, I'm thinking about how to circle back to this. Um, there was a question asked: are you willing to be uncomfortable, called in, and challenged in this conversation? Why or why not? Well, obviously, all three of these women said yes. They answered why. I'm hoping that when they share their why for showing up today, that it leaves the call to action to you as a white woman out here who feel like you're afraid, your fear is holding you back, the uncertainty on what to say and not to say, what not to say, right? I'm hoping that they say something as they close out that will impact you. So whoever wants to start, go ahead. Let's try to hold it to, I think Ryan said I have about what did you say? Ryan, probably a few minutes, 10 minutes. So let's keep it close. I know this is engaging, but again, there will be a part two. So,
I could go first. Um, am I willing to be uncomfortable? Hell yeah. Like duh. I mean, obviously. And that's where the learning grows, not only as a well, really, because I am a person, because I am a human being sharing the same earth with everybody else from all colors, from all walks of life and spectrums and religions and sexualities and genders and languages and socioeconomic statuses and all that. We are in this together as human beings on this thing that we call earth. And so we have to learn to be better people. And I think, there's an intersection of faith in there too, about
mhm,
how I identify as a progressive Christian and how the teachings of Jesus are enforced within me to want to do better and be better and walk in his steps of love and unconditional love, of all of God's people. And I think that that's kind of where I stand is, yes, I'm willing to be comfortable. Yes, I'm being willing to call out, and yes, I'm being willing to be challenged, because that's how I learn, and that's how I grow, and that's how I'm able to reinforce these things, to be able to raise a son that walks in the same footsteps as I do and mirror what true love and patience and humankind and empathy looks like, instead of him being bullied by kids who love to throw the n-word around on the bus like it's nothing, you know. That's unacceptable behavior, and the words that my father uses are unacceptable behavior, and you do not behave like this in this society. That God loves us all unconditionally, and that's what we have to reflect in our day to day, and we have to unlearn these behaviors that are generationally ingrained with us. And it is up to us to change that pattern of behavior, and is up to us to do the work and to sit in that discomfort, to learn and grow, and let there be peace on earth.
Love it. Thank you.
I feel like this was a very comfortable experience for me. There's a whole lot of situations I'm not comfortable in, and this was not up in there at all. You know, call me out, call me in, call me. Like, I don't want to ask you what to do because that's punting the labor back onto you. But seriously, I am here to be uncomfortable. It's not right, but it is awfully white of me to sit here and, worry about my comfort.
I'll agree with that.
I
Yeah,
know.
for real. She's right. It is a very white, uh, I mean, that's a privilege that we have, is that we get to walk around feeling comfortable all the time. And I think that this conversation is needed. I, as a person in the world, value all beings equally and want everyone to have the same opportunities that I was afforded. And so my values really lead me to a place to be uncomfortable, because if I don't listen to other experiences and learn from other people and get called in on the things that maybe I see differently, I cannot learn and change and leave this world a better place than when I got here. And that's really my only goal, is to make sure that I'm touching people's lives in a way that adds to their experience on this, not takes away.
Listen, my thing is, what was I gonna say? I've been present, y'all. Usually I'm like doing a million things because, neurodivergent, we have our talks, Violet. Like my brain goes. So this is the thing. I always like to tell people, we have a lot of people who follow us, who believe that all lives matter. I agree. This is how it matters. This is how we demonstrate that we all matter, by doing this, doing the uncomfortable, doing the unconventional, and it's not over. Uh, I want to thank my guests. I always feel like this time is very much short that we spend in communication and sharing and sharing space with each other. I am absolutely for sure that people are going to ask for a part two. So, you three ladies, we will be thinking of something. Women's Month is next month. As we close out Black History Month, which Black history is all throughout the year, but as we close out, I want it to be more intentional and talk about the things that are happening in harm reduction. This is the work we do every day, all the time. Susanna knows, Melissa knows, and yeah, Violet may not carry the title as a harm reductionist, but just from my observation, she's been doing it. So we must continue. I want to thank you for joining. So now, you guys that are watching, this is your task. During the month of March, we are planning an in-person podcast taping. It will be, yes. So everybody that's watching this, I'm telling you, we are planning one that will take place in our Health and Wellness Lounge. if we have many people respond to our invitation, we will make this invitation only. And the only reason we're going to do that is everybody's not ready for the real and raw and unfiltered. And when you show up, this is not a spectator sport. So just as similarly as I put out a post, the people that will show up to this will be people who are interested in dismantling systems that have been harmful by starting to build real and authentic relationships. People who have been guests on these platforms will be invited. But for you, if you are interested, we want you to like and subscribe to our podcast. And we want you to get in our DMs, in our inbox, and let us know that you are interested in being on the email list to be invited to the in-person podcast taping. We will let you know what the topic is. However, I want you to look back at our first few podcasts and understand that it will be real. We're going to have to get you here, Suzanne, and you're right across the river, so you kind of...
Say less. I'll be there.
Please like, share, subscribe, donate. Funds are dropping, you guys. You all see what's going on. We got donation links. Please continue to support what we do. Harm reduction is not the sexy thing that people want to do and support. So at a federal level, at a local level at times. Our state is actually doing very well at supporting, but we need you to be in support too. So the link for donation and the QR code is up right now. I, again, am so grateful for the individuals that I'm in relationship with that are showing up in these spaces. It fills my heart. No, I'm not going to cry for y'all, but I am filled with every piece of the feels. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all.